floating dead wife, a clown in serious need of a dentist, and the only time you'll hear me say dick and box in the same sentence. I thought we couldn't get any better with last week's episode of It Welcome to Derry, but this one might actually top it with our first full-on Pennywise appearance and a ton of insane new theories. How does this license plate hint at Ingrid Kirsch's true identity? Where will Hank go now that he's on the run? And how does Rich get such soft hands?
Your hand is really soft.
But before we begin, Uncle Sam wants you to like and subscribe and leave a red balloon in the comments. I write, edit, and produce these videos all by myself, and every little bit helps the video float on up the algorithm. The Pennywise daughter theory gets even more insane this week. If you've been following my videos, you'll know I think our favorite Juniper Hill staffer might just be the daughter of Pennywise, or should I say Bob Gray, the name of his human form before Galoo took on his clown persona. So instead of rehashing what we know, let's take a look at the new information. First, we have a name, Ingrid Kirsch. She's married to Stan Kirsch, the local butcher who we saw briefly in episode 2. It's kind of fun that the butcher's telling her not to overcook his steak. Now I got a kind of domestic violence vibe from this guy, which might explain why Ingrid has been fooling around with Hank Grogan, who we learned last episode was having an affair with a married white woman. I theorized Ingrid might be this woman, however there was one thing holding me back. Until this episode, we've never seen her wear a wedding ring. It's only here that we see her have one. Later in the episode, for example, it's nowhere to be found. An episode of The Honeymooners plays in the background, a comedy that would often make fun of beating up your wife.
Oh, you're gonna get it, Alice! You're gonna get it!
We also get confirmation that she's probably not a ghost, since last episode the only other character to have interacted with her was Lily, but in 105 we have her husband, Hank, and Charlotte all engaging with her. But this is where things get really interesting. The reappearance of Matty Clements has me questioning everything. He appeared to the kids as a normal human, minus looking extremely vitamin deficient. Is there anyone else in Derry that could appear normal, but is actually Galoo in disguise? Ingrid wears this diamond Harlequin-esque apron lined with Pennywise red. She wore red last episode at the diner and will wear it when she reunites with Hank. Now these last two details might be a bit of a stretch, but let me know what you think. The kitchen centerpiece looks like a yellow upside-down umbrella, conjuring images of Georgie and his raincoat the day he disappeared. The doorbell is shaped like a star, and it was Galoo who came to Earth in what Taniel described as an ancient star. Now, does this mean Ingrid Kirsch is the same Mrs. Kirsch we saw in It Chapter 2? Likely not, but there is a workaround I'll get to. First, if this were indeed the same person, that would make Mrs. Kirsch here roughly 121 years old. I'm using the actress's age of 67 and adding 54 years when the events of It Chapter 2 take place. Second, what adult Beverly saw in It Chapter 2 was a Galoo vision, so as far as we know she didn't actually meet a real Mrs. Kirsch. But here's something absolutely insane. Check out the license plate, 071-690. This is strange because license plates in Maine at the time would not have started with the number 0. Meaning this is a fabricated plate number made by the props department. Knowing that, let's dig a little deeper. In the Bible, there's only one book that has 71 chapters. That's the book of Psalms. And if we look at verses 6 through 9, they're all about a child born of God, praising it to be its loyal follower, and asking for its strength in old age. I encourage you to pause and take a look at this in more detail, but I want to go over this last line, which could mean that the 121-year-old that we saw in It Chapter 2 is actually Ingrid Kirsch, and that somehow its power has given her the strength to live well beyond her years. Now, is this whole license plate theory a coincidence? Let me know what you think. Last episode, we saw Dick Hallorann venture into the mind of Taniel and uncover the origin of the entity known as Galoo. Taniel is part of a secret order of the Scottawapscott tribe, whose mission is to keep Galoo locked up and the pillars which bind it hidden. For some reason, this is a different tribe name than the Shakapiwa, which helped Mike Hanlon in It Chapter 2. In episode 2, General Shaw mentioned that Project Precept hinged on finding a series of beacons that point to a weapon that can create debilitating fear. The weapon itself is glue, and these beacons are what the indigenous refer to as pillars. The pillars were taken from shards of the star that imprison the entity and are, to our knowledge, the only thing that it's weak against. Shaw believes that by containing glue, it could be used as a weapon against the Russians. Shaw's knowledge of glue stems from Rose herself. Usually when one leaves DERRY, their memories begin to fade, but Shaw states that he was administered a drug by the Department of Defense, and his memories of their summer 45 years ago came rushing back. It's possible this drug is a predecessor of Lot 6, an experimental drug created by a shadowy government agency called The Shop in Stephen King's Firestarter. It was used to unlock latent psychic abilities. Shaw wants this weapon to keep America safe. The backdrop of the Cold War sees children participating in nuclear bomb drills, and with talks of the Soviets moving missiles into Cuba, the threat of nuclear war isn't all that far-fetched. Thus, he's willing to take on a supernatural entity if it means it will win them the war. Rose tells him that glue cannot be controlled, but he doesn't believe her. So Rose is basically like, if they're gonna go in, they might as well have her help. In a safe behind her closet is Sesqui's dagger, the ancient weapon carved from the star that trapped glue. We don't know much about how it works. In fact, Rose says Taniel is one of the few who does. We'll see that it keeps Pennywise at bay and glows when he's around. I'm unsure if these runes are meant to display the number 13, since there are 13 of them, or if it just kinda looks like that. The other runes don't really look like numbers. We also get a little more insight on how Glue's cycles work from John. He's an elder in charge of these meetings. He notes that this cycle has been milder than the one in 35 and 08, less deaths than previously. However, there's still time before the augury. This is a major catastrophic event that signifies the end of the cycle. In 1935, it was the Bradley Gang Massacre, and in 08, the Kitchener Ironworks explosion. Both events are depicted in Welcome to Derry's intro credits and will be explored in different seasons of the show. We also get a brief glimpse of a map of Derry where we can see notable landmarks like the Kitchener Ironworks. The big event in 1962, at least in the novel, is the burning of the Black Spot, the hangout for African-American members of the military. And if you stick around to my trailer sleuthing section, we'll get a little bit more into that. The Elder refers to someone known as the Keeper. It's not 100% known what it is they keep, but my guess it's some sort of record of each cycle that details the history of Galoo and its hold over Derry. Knowing time is of the essence before the cycle finishes, General Shaw implements Operation Neibolt. At the end of episode 4, Dick Hallorann used his powers to find the location of the pillars, at least where to start. The well under the Neibolt house that leads to the sewers we saw in It chapters 1 and 2. The house looks pretty much the same as it did in 1988 with the Losers Club. It was built in the late 19th, early 20th centuries by railroad workers, but has since been abandoned. The army makes its way into the sewers, among them Leroy Hanlon, Taniel, and Dick Hallorann. Dick has already been in these sewers, well, at least telepathically when he was transported to Pennywise's lair in episode 3. Now he's here for real, and he's about to experience his most visceral vision yet. It doesn't take long for Galoo to do his work, pulling Dick under the water into a vision we saw glimpses of last episode. There he sees his grandmother, who we saw previously floating in Pennywise's chamber and in the background of the forest. We know from The Shining she also shared Dick's telepathic abilities, and the two would often have whole conversations between each other in their heads. This is something Grandpa brings up and is none too pleased about. He carries with him a chained box. If you remember last episode, Grandma reminded him to, quote, keep that lid on tight. It's in Dr. Sleep we learn that Dick's grandmother taught him something called the lockbox technique, a sort of mental defense mechanism that allows him to store monsters, spirits, and even trauma. In episode 3, we got glimpses of this trauma when Dick met Pennywise, shots of his time in the war, his grandmother, and a Mardi Gras type festival. When Grandpa opens the box, it suggests all these traumatic memories, including actual spirits or monsters from his past, could be unleashed upon Derry. Dick's vision also hints at his abusive upbringing. From Dr. Sleep, we know that it was his grandfather who tormented him, and we'll see him yelling at Dick that power like his is meant to be used, so it's very likely he wanted to exploit Dick's power for his own gain, something he and his grandmother were vehemently against. We don't really know how Grandma died, but if this vision is any indication, it was likely a gunshot by Grandpa. Also, I've never heard of anyone use the phrase sphincter of your soul. Absolutely diabolical. In the final shot of the episode, we'll see the box been opened, his traumas have been released, but we also see this pool of blood. Is that his grandma's, or did he wind up killing his grandfather? The last we see Dick, he emerges from the sewers to see Russo's zombie-like body. We've already seen the ghosts of Teddy and Susie manifest back in Derry, so expect even more in the episodes to come. Last episode, Marge had an eye-opening revelation that the It entity exists. She's dodged a bet at Juniper Hill by lying about what happened, stating a piece of her glasses broke off and cut her eye. Lily was just trying to help. Marge has been the absolute worst friend over the past few episodes, and she's apologizing for letting Lily down. This seems to be a turning point for her as she'll join the gang in their quest to take down Galoo. The kids meet at the abandoned standpipe where they're shocked to find Matty Clements, the boy who disappeared months ago at the beginning of episode 1. It's kind of ironic that this is the spot Matty showed to Lily, and now it's the site of his return. He says he's been held captive by a clown in the Derry sewers where not just him, but others have been kept alive. There are two subtle clues that hint that Matty isn't really who he says he is. The first is that he says the clown only feeds at night and sleeps during the day. We know that's absolutely false. There have been countless examples of Pennywise terrorizing the citizens of Derry during the day. The second is that he doesn't want the kids going to the police or taking him to his father. That's because he wants to get these kids on their own into the sewers to maximize the fear he can feed off. But what about Phil Malkin? Like Matty, we haven't seen him manifest as a ghost, plus his face on the cereal box in episode 2 was human. Matty suggests that he could still be alive, so the kids decide to do what all Derry kids do, go at it alone without telling any of their parents. Luckily, they have a trick up their sleeve. Lily's mom's happy pills she calls Mommy's Little Helper. These drugs could suppress their fear, but really these things might as well have been a placebo because it does not work. Although we get this hilarious scene between Marge and Rich.
Are you two holding hands?
No?
Yeah.
We know from episode 2, Rich has been crushing on her. Also, I love this shot, which is a total recreation from the movies. The sewers are an absolute nightmare for all who enter, especially the military. One by one, soldiers are picked off by Galoo. Like this version who takes the form of Uncle Sam. You can actually see an Uncle Sam I Want You poster in the intro credits. Speaking of which, it seems the sound designers are adding creepier music to the intro song each week. For Leroy, Galoo takes the form of his wife. What does that say when your greatest fear is your wife? Well, we can't actually be sure because Leroy isn't supposed to feel fear due to his damaged amygdala, the part of the brain that generates fear. There's also this amazing use of dramatic irony here where we, the viewer, know the kids are in the sewers, but the military does not. It adds for an extra degree of suspense. It's here Matty reveals himself as Pennywise and we get our first real look at the clown. Now, the producers claim they wanted a slow build-up to his return, but in reality Bill Skarsgård wasn't even attached to the project until after filming initially began and the writer's strike, which then opened up his schedule. Leroy, having already seen Galoo take the form of his wife, attempts to shoot Will, believing him to be another manifestation. It's his partner Russo, however, who realizes Will's real and takes the bullet. It's interesting in the debrief that there's no mention that it was Leroy who pulled the trigger. All he says is that Russo got hit. This might not be the last we hear about this, as Shaw states he still has some questions of his own. He'll also state that, quote, these people will answer for what they let us into, hinting that there will be retribution against the indigenous people. Which is kind of hilarious considering it was Rose who explicitly told Shaw not to go in there. Last episode, Hank teamed up with Charlotte Hanlon, who made it her mission to release him from jail. Unfortunately for Hank, this process will take a few days, and he'll have to spend that time at the infamous Shawshank Penitentiary. This is 1962, so he would technically be there the same time as Andy Dufresne from the Shawshank Redemption. Sheriff Bowers refers to him as a fish, which was the same term used in the film to refer to new inmates. He also threatened Hank saying, you know what they do to kitty killers in Shawshank. Every moment Hank is in jail is a moment he could be killed. So you can understand when the prison bus he's on is attacked and he's able to set himself free, he uses the opportunity to escape. This quote-unquote crash happens on Route 9, which is a road mentioned in many Stephen King novels, including the Tommyknockers and It. It's said that it's a road where reality gets thin and distances don't quite make sense. In Maine folklore, this road is known for being haunted as it spans into the deep woods with no civilization for miles. We aren't exactly sure if this route is within the confines of Galoo's power or if something else is at play, but Hank does say that something attacked the bus. I found it odd that Ingrid's first idea on where to hide Hank is her place, and I'm like, girl, your husband is there. Thankfully, Hank knows someone who can help, which is why we'll see Ingrid introduce herself to Charlotte. As Hank makes his way to the bus, the father of Phil and Susie Malkin attempts to shoot him, believing him responsible for the deaths of his kids. It's hard to say whether this would have happened had it not occurred in Derry. The tribe elder states that as the cycle approaches its climax, the townsfolk become more restless. There's even talk of Galoo shedding its discharge in the Derry water supply, which could have something to do with it. And if you want to know where Hank will end up, join me as we head into our trailer sleuthing section where we try to figure out what will happen next. Here we find Lily in what might be the attic of Ingrid Kirsch's house. That's because we'll see a woman with long black hair here, and this shot of Ingrid, which matches the color of the walls in the background. Lily's looking through a series of photo albums which show Bob Gray, the man who would become Pennywise. This is likely his daughter Ingrid, who also happened to be the clown young Periwinkle in Shaw's flashback. We'll see another shot of Pennywise, but look how bad the makeup and prosthetic hair is here. This is likely what Bob Gray looked like when he performed as Pennywise in this traveling circus. We'll see images of this show at the carnival, which suggest we'll see his full origin story. Here's young Periwinkle's wig. If you've seen my episode 4 video, you'll know I think the figure Will sees outside his window might in fact be Ingrid. Marge and the gang at the Black Spot? In the Welcome to Set trailer, we'll see shots of them there with Hank Grogan. So Ronnie is most likely reunited with him there, where he'll hide from the authorities. This is where a group of white men come in and burn it down. I think they're the Legion of White Decency, a sign of which we see on the Welcome to Derry billboard. Pennywise is said to have been seen here, and we know Dick Hallorann and Will were at this event. It looks like Ronnie and Hank will survive as well. Some sort of big event happens with the kids of Derry. We'll see them clamoring for the door, which I think could be at the school. We'll see Patty and the others float, and in another shot her missing persons poster on the side of the Derry standpipe. We'll also get this shot of Ronnie, Marge, and Lily running through the mist as the other children float above them. You can just make out Sesqui's dagger here. In this shot, Marge holds onto it, and its glow suggests Galoo is nearby. This mist is also something that envelops Derry. We aren't exactly sure what causes this, but some have theorized it connects to the military operation from Stephen King's The Mist, which sought to peer into other dimensions but inadvertently ushered in monsters. The military taking out an object of importance. Perhaps it's one of the pillars which they'll then melt into some sort of weapon. We'll see them digging up a turtle shell that holds one of these pillars in this shot here. This appears to be Pennywise's circus carriage with a pool of blood spilling from the floor. With 3 episodes left, It Welcomes to Derry is really amping up, and I'm excited to see where things go. But now I turn it over to you. What do you think will happen next? I want to hear your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, be sure to like and subscribe, and for more bad takes you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ThinkStoryYT. Until next time, remember,
Daddy loves you very much.